visual media is is another beautiful way, but to get that visceral reality of the words on the page, I don't think there's anything better. Um, and Lisha or Liesha, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry if I'm not. From Cape Town, it's nice to meet you. Welcome to InkSoc. And I like that. I like that. Writing to recreate yourself. That's stunning. I love that phrase. And I completely agree. That's something that I started writing for as well. When I moved from high school to here to Rhodes, I think writing to recreate is a very powerful is a very powerful statement and a relatable one. Um, so Guma, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Please say if I'm not, because I do want to get the pronunciations correct. Welcome from Zimbabwe, and yeah, to clear the mind. And yeah, it's difficult to speak, right? It's difficult to talk to people. Um, I was a very shy person in high school, and writing was the one way that I could get my inner thoughts across. So thank you so much um, for joining the session. Tana, also from Zimbabwe. Nice, we got a lot of Zimbabweans here. It's cool to see that. I write because I enjoy allowing my mind to roam. That, yeah, I mean, these sessions in InkSoc and like as a whole, we want your mind to roam. We want to really see, your inner voice, your creativity, and the easiest way to do that is to start writing because you never know what's going to come next. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all here. Um, I think maybe could the com also say something like about themselves, just a quick phrase, if that's okay. So I'll
Okay.
start. My name is Dylan. I'm from KZN, um, and yeah, I write to define myself, to define my personality, and just to yeah, I mean, I stare at the screen for 90% of the day. All of the work we do is on the screen. Sometimes just pulling out a notepad and a pen is a brilliant way to escape from that.
That's cool. Um, Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm originally from London, but I'm currently based in Johannesburg. And I write to experience because whenever I create something at all, whether it's an art piece or something for writing, it's specifically so I can experience something new. Specifically so I can experience either a world of fantasy, a world of the far future, or a world of the distant past. That's why I write to experience, to recreate that sensation when you pick up a good book.
That's amazing. You guys are just so. It's just so lovely hearing like minded people talk about a similar passion. So, I honestly, I feel like if I had to talk about why I write, it's gonna be copying a little bit of everybody's answers because it's so relatable, all of this.
So why I write? I feel like it's my duty to get the stories that are in my head out into the real world. Um, it would almost be an injustice if I were to, pass before my time and then those stories, weren't a part of history, weren't a part of the world. And so I suppose I am motivated by, that need to share, whatever experiences that I might have. But also, it's a bit morbid, but like, I'm also motivated by that fear of not getting everything done, in time. So I'd say that's why I write. But yeah, I really do resonate with a lot of what has been said with regard to using it as a form of escape, using it as a way to reinvent yourself, learn and unlearn. I think that's really brilliant. So yeah, those are my reasons.
That's great. Thank you. I think we've had a lot of diverse and resonating comments. Has everyone, have all of the members said something? Nizole, I'm not sure if you've said something.
Nizola did. She put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Then I think we've all gone. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's a bit personal and thought-provoking, and I hope that you continue to think about why you write and kind of sit in that passion during the rest of this weekend. So that concludes our icebreakers, and it was lovely getting to know you, and I'm keen to get to know you further throughout the year. So I think we can hand it back to Kiva to continue us with the session.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna have my video off just for a little bit because I don't want to be cut off again. So yes, to just add on to what Jules was saying, thank you so much for sharing. It is something that's very personal, and yeah, it's brilliant to hear everyone out. So thank you so much for sharing. All right, so I'm now going to hand over to Dylan. He's going to take us through his presentation on introductions. So take it away, Dylan.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kiva. Let me share my screen. So yeah, thank you all for being here for the presentation. I hope I make good use of your time. So today I'm going to be talking about introductions, one of the most important, if not the most important part of a story. Because if your introduction does not grab people, then they won't get to the middle of your story. They won't get to your thrilling conclusion, your plot twists, and everything that happens in between. So just before I'd like to start, I just have one question. What are your favorite introductions? Do you have any poems, books, novels, plays, anything with a great introduction that you'd like to share?
I can't name too much from like books I've read, but like I can definitely say from like when I would have writing assignments, like narratives, I like an introduction that like gets into action. Most of the time, I like it when it's like intense action, like a character being chased or like just something with like speed and thrill. But it's I feel like it's also nice if it's like describing a character mid-routine to like kind of give them um how do I say this? To kind of like introduce them.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. That sort of mid-scene introduction is always a very captivating one, and I'll actually talk more about those in this presentation. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Is anyone else?
Hi, Dylan.
Hi.
Yeah. My favorite introduction, it's not really the start of the book, but it's the start of a paragraph in the book.
Okay.
It's just, I think it's very short. It says, what is pain? Pain is a woman. And this is like the internal dialogue of a woman who's been abused, and she's in a very draining and very toxic marriage, if I can say. And it's from a book called The Sun Will Rise Again by George Mjajati. And it's a really nice book if you want to understand the context of a very abusive marriage per se. So yeah, those two sentences, what is pain? Pain is a woman. That was the start of the paragraph before she went on to talk about her experiences.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful, it's a very potent introduction. And yeah, of course, introductions are not just the the start of things. They can come in the middle of things. They can introduce new ideas, new experiences. And I think that phrase there is a great example of an introduction that grabs you, and also is quite a powerful reflection on what happens in society, in reality. So thank you so much for sharing that. Any more?
Can I go?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so back in my first year, I did nervous conditions in English.
Dash.
And for me, the opening line was just so hard hitting. It goes, "I was not sorry when my brother died." And just, it's so simple, but it has such an impact. And I think for me, that's one of my all-time favorite introductions.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You did spoil one of the slides that are coming up, but that's okay because
So sorry.
no, it's a good introduction. It grabs you right there, and I'll talk more about why that introduction is so powerful and so grabbing later on. Cool. Can we have one more? If anyone does have. If not, we can continue. Cool. If you do have any introductions at any point in this presentation, just raise your hand, and I think I should be able to see it on my side. So yeah, I am just going to take you through a few of my personal favorite introductions. Yeah, let's keep going. It was a queer, sultry summer. The summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York. So yeah, it's a very mysterious introduction. One, you don't really know what's going on, but it's exciting, and I will get more to that later. Douglas Adams, one of the undisputed kings of introductions. I actually have two of his here. Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that they still think digital watches are a pretty neat idea. And another Douglas Adams one. In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move. J.R.R. Tolkien, in the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11th birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. And finally, a book that I'm reading at the moment, which is very good. I would recommend it to everyone. Cobb's mother, Jenny Fields, was arrested in Boston in 1942 for wounding a man in a movie theater. So I will get to all of those later. Yeah, first I am going to ask, what is the purpose of an introduction? Yeah, what do you guys think? What is it for? Other than to introduce your book, which is, self-explanatory.
I would say an introduction is to grab the reader's attention, because once you have the reader engaged from the introduction, then they'd want to read the rest of whatever you've written. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To grab your reader's attention, it's such an important thing to do, and an increasingly difficult thing to do, where media is becoming flash media. You see it, if it doesn't grab your attention in 5 seconds, it's on to the next thing. So I think introductions need to grab your attention. They need to grab your attention and hold it there. So yeah, anyone else?
Hi, I think the purpose of an introduction is to gravitate the reader's energy, because in our day-to-day lives we have different energies. Maybe you're coming from class, or you're sitting in a bus, or you've had a bad day, or you're having a great day. So it's to pull your energy to one, like to their focal point, so that you're in the zone, in the space that they're in. So it should essentially, as others have said, grab your attention and then also gravitate your energy towards the reader's energy. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, no, I quite like that description. Yeah, literature reading can change your mood. And I think a gravitation towards the energy that you want to put out into literature is an incredibly important tool to use when you write. And I think that the introduction is the best place to do that. So yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. If there are any more, just raise your hand. But yeah, I will be heading to the next slide. So look at, okay, we have things in chat. Sorry, to set the tone, yes, that's once again, one of my slides are spoiled, but that's a good thing. And to give the reader an idea of what the book is about. Yeah, I think that's a textbook definition of what an introduction is. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So yeah, take a look at these two newspaper front pages. Which one are you looking at first? Which one are you gravitated towards? The one on the left is such an attention grabber. It just gets your attention. It tells you what it is. It's a story about these women who are leading the way for this pride parade using motorbikes. And for sure, the one on the right, the information and the content of the story might be as interesting as the one on the left, but my eyes are just not even registering it. I'm all the way for the left one. And this is what your introduction should be. You shouldn't quote this in an essay, but your introduction should be that rainbow, that biker holding up peace signs. So yeah, your introductions are there to captivate, to excite. They should leave a spark in the mind of the reader that will hopefully turn into a bonfire as they continue reading your book, your story, your poem, your essay, your play, your manifesto, even scribbles on a bathroom wall. Give them a nice introduction, make people want to read them. So yeah, picture yourself in a bookstore, and there are 20 books on a shelf. They all have nice, captivating covers. So you flick to the first page. So yeah, just to continue the previous story, if you're in a bookstore and you only have time to read the first few lines of each book, you're going to choose the one with the best introduction. So yeah, now picture yourself in a jungle, one with things, full of things that are trying to kill you, or, Australia. And you are this adventurer, this explorer that is really in the thick of it. You can't make any sudden movements. You can't crack any branches, because then, this rare bird or this rare animal that you're looking for is going to fly away. And it's the same for introductions. One wrong move, one wrong sentence, and your reader's going to put your book down. Because when you're writing an introduction to the book, the stakes are high. Your reader knows that they're going to invest several hours into reading. Well, if you're writing a book, it's a little bit different for poetry or short stories. But yeah, if you're too mysterious, they may lose interest. If you bombard them with information, they may become overwhelmed. So how do you find the right balance? Well, I've got some guidelines for you. Obviously, these are not set in stone rules. Please break these rules if you feel like your story would benefit from it. These are just a quick few guidelines to help you get started. Number one, pose a question. So one of the best ways to grab a reader's attention is to get them thinking. If we go back to that Sylvia Plath introduction, who are the Rosenbergs? Why were they electrocuted? Why is this mysterious person in New York? I want to know these things. I want to know why. And because I want to know why, I'll keep reading. I'll finish the book because I'm invested immediately in what the story has to offer me. Same for where the hell is Hobbiton? Why is there an 11th birthday? A good, well-written and interestingly posed questions leaves the reader wanting to get to the bottom of the strange occurrence. And bear in mind, this is not a question that you have to answer at all throughout the novel. You can, and a lot of books and novels do, but leave them guessing for a bit, make them think, because then they're invested in what happens, and if their idea of what happens. Yeah, I think I got the across as a message in the chat. That's just the links. So yeah, are there any questions regarding questions being posed? Yeah, are there any questions regarding questions? Cool. I will move on to the next slide. If there is questions, please just yeah, speak up over me. That's totally fine. So yeah, as Kiva mentioned, Never's conditions. So here's an introduction that I wrote on top. My relationship with my brother had become increasingly strained over the years. I wanted what he had, an education and full support from my family. So when he died from illness, I didn't feel any sorrow. And then if you contrast it with the actual introduction of the book, I was not sorry when my brother died. I think if you put those two in a boxing ring, I was not sorry when my brother died comes out on top every time. So yeah, do any of you have any ideas on why this introduction is such a potent one? Or why the first one sucks? Sorry, I think the recording host was a bit messed up. Yeah, continue.
Sorry. That echoed. I just wanted to contribute and say that I think the second one is just very jarring, and it's something that you wouldn't expect a person to think or to feel, versus the top one is more of like a logical understanding of the emotion. The bottom one is just raw emotion, which I think can be quite grabbing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone else?
Yes, can I speak?
Yeah, please do.
I feel like the second one, it poses so many questions, such as like, why would you feel that? What did your brother do? How did he die? Whereas the first one just kind of tells you the whole story from the jump.
Yeah, absolutely. In the first one, nothing's left to imagination. Nothing's left to the reader to feel anything. It tells you why.
Water finished?
Sorry?
I only have a bottle left. Do you have water?
Yes.
How many bottles?
Sorry, Gosiman, can you please mute your mic?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. So yeah, the first one doesn't pose any questions. I know what happened. I pretty much know the first half of the book now. Obviously, there's details that are left out, but you know, it gives you a synopsis of the story. The second one, why weren't you sorry? Why did your brother die? pose such big questions that the novel drags you in, and you wait in bated breath for the answers. Yes, Kiva.
Hi. So I think this example in particular is really interesting because with introductions, I think some people get the idea that it needs to be long, that you need to have lots of information in it. But I think something as simple as I was not sorry when my brother died is very, as Joel said, like hard hitting, it's short, it's simple, and it's an introduction, but it's not something that's necessarily lengthy.
Yeah, yeah. The shortness packs such a punch. It's such a it's such a final statement. There's no room for interpretation. She wasn't sorry. That's it. She wasn't sorry that her brother died. And in many ways, it subverts the reader's expectation. Um, in a world of schedules and predictable everyday happenings, the reader wants to be shocked, thrown out of their comfort zones, even if it's just a little. Um, and the nervous conditions line is quite shocking. It's a very jarring start to a novel, and it's not what you'd expect. If we go back to the Douglas Adams introduction, why did this overly sarcastic narrator just insult me? Why did it insult the entire planet I live on, the solar system in which the planet is in, and what is wrong with digital watches? You have this idea of the narrator, as being kind of like, you have this rapport with the narrator. They're almost like your friend. They tell you what's happening, what's going on, why it's happening. But yeah, no, they straight up insulting you. It goes quite against what we'd expect from a narrator in the introduction. So yeah, if your narrator is a little different from everyone else, if they have some interesting quirks, or if they're just not your standard person, let the reader know that in the introduction. Tell them that this isn't who you expect to narrate a story. But also, if you do plan to shock the reader, just exercise a little bit of caution, because too much shock can just as easily turn them away as it can pull them in. So yeah, try keep it simple. Making a large, subversion of the expectation can work, but that's something that you now have to build your entire story around. So sometimes a small subversion, like, I don't know, my narrator doesn't have feet and they walk on their hands. That's quite a large subversion of one's expectations, but something smaller can work a lot more, a lot more potently. So yeah, do we have any questions about subverting the writer's expectation? Or do you have any examples of introductions that do this very well? Cool. I have an example. If you do, you can just put your hand up. A Certain Slant of Light by Lara Whitcomb. Someone was looking at me. A disturbing sensation if you're dead. This isn't a normal narrator. This is a complete subversion of the expectation that the narrator is a living being. But here, right off the bat, they're saying, no, I'm not alive, I'm dead, and someone is looking at me. It poses questions, but it's also a subversion of what we expect when we begin a novel. Why is this person dead? Why is someone looking at a dead person? Are they a ghost? Are they, what are they? It's a very interesting start, and it pulls the reader in. But before you do this, it's also incredibly important that you know what your story is. So you can put a real head scratcher of a question in your introduction, but if you don't know the answer to that question, then the novel might take a turn for the worst. A good introduction also requires a good body and a good conclusion, because it's what you're building up to. It's what you want to grab the reader for. So those shadowy figures that roam the streets of Grahamstown that you've described so eerily in your introduction might just be donkeys, but your readers don't need to know that. When they read your introduction, they have this vision of four-legged beasts that neigh ferociously as they search relentlessly for their next blade of grass. That should be on your mind, not that they're just donkeys. And for sure, you can reveal this later in your novel, but in your introduction, it might be a good idea to keep some suspense, keep some mystery. And now you don't have to have a word-for-word story, but just a good idea of what is coming next can always help out. So yeah, does anyone have any questions for this? Any examples?
I think also with your previous slide, can you please play it back? Yeah, that one. It's not necessarily that the person is dead as you think. Like, you could play around with it to say maybe you were dead on the inside, like it's a metaphorical death, not an actual one. So that I think also counts as what you're saying as mapping your story before you start, like grab the attention and then reveal the detail later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All these points work best when they're in collaboration with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that this introduction, takes elements from all three of the points that I've said so far. Why are they dead? This person is dead. That's not normal, at least for someone speaking. And it also gives you an idea that they know what the rest of the story is going to entail. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, to use an example from Wuthering Heights, it's 1801. I have just returned from a visit to my landlord, the solitary neighbor that I shall be troubled with. And if you have read Wuthering Heights, you know that the narrator is not only troubled by this one person. There's quite a lot of trouble in that novel. So yeah, the writer knows what's going to happen with the story, but the reader doesn't, and that is an intriguing element for a novel to have in its introduction. This example also does well at setting the tone. 1801, we know the year. Are you writing a 16th century erotic tale of two condemned lovers? Or is it a futuristic dystopia set on the streets of a bustling city several light years away? Or perhaps it's a 21st century horror that details this sadistic mind of a man too far gone. You should let the reader know. You should tell them what type of novel it is, because if you save this revolution for chapter 4, and I'm someone who enjoys futuristic sci-fi novels, I'm not going to find any of that in the first 4 chapters, and I'm going to put it back down. So yeah, talk about the clothes they wear, the cars or the horses that they drive or ride. Do they walk everywhere? How do they talk? What language do they talk in? Give your readers a sense of where you are and what your environment is. Yeah, does anyone have any good examples of setting the tone?
I think I'm not so sure, but can I just try and make an example?
Yeah, please do.
Maybe starting with, I was confused and stuck in the thick, dusty silhouette of the busy streets in Ghana. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sort of sets the tone that you're in Africa, you're in Ghana, and the streets are busy and it's dusty. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, immediately I can place myself there. it's a brief description. It's not a very detailed description, but I can put myself in the narrator's shoes. I can envision the environment.
Yeah.
And immediately, I've set the tone for the novel. I know that the novel is going to involve Ghana. And yeah, I think it's a brilliant introduction. Thanks for sharing that.
An introduction I particularly like is the from Percy Jackson series, because one thing the author does is that he makes the titles themselves also act as an introduction. So the first words you read for the Percy Jackson series is, "I accidentally vaporized my maths teacher."
Yeah.
And then it goes on about being a half-blood and how dangerous it is. So it immediately just gets you in the idea that, okay, I'm in for a wild ride. And as the books go on, every time you open the page, every time you look at the titles, you get a sense of, oh crud, what does this mean now? And stuff like that. Because the titles themselves are a bit misleading and they kind of draw you in more because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've read all the Percy Jackson novels. I've even read all the spin-offs. And I think they do an incredible job of setting the scene. We know that it's going to be a fantasy novel right off the gate. And it also, if we return back here, it subverts the expectation that an introduction is a description. It's not a description. It can place you right in the middle of an action, mid-scene. This wild thing is happening. Why is it happening? The idea that an introduction is a description, just doesn't fly, because it's so much more than that. So yeah, this is a novel that I feel sets the tone very, very well. We were somewhere around Boston, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold. Immediately, without reading the novel, I know it's going to talk about narcotics. If you know where Barstow is, you can place yourself there, but you know that it's a desert, and that's enough. And yeah, you already get this idea of like a hazy environment. The heat's beating down, and you've just taken a bunch of acid. So it's quite a powerful grabbing tool that it uses. So yeah, now that we have these guidelines down, let's write. So just write a 1 or 2 liner. You can use any of the prompts that you have here. I'll read them out quickly. You're a young girl who has just set her first foot on land after spending your entire youth at sea. Your narrator's name is Dave, or is it? Aliens who only communicate via sign language invade Earth. To avoid war, our government must engage in a vastly marginalized portion of the human population, the hearing impaired. One bright morning in May, all domestic pets started talking. Have you ever read about the world's loneliest whale? Write an introduction about a story in which he's actually the survivor of an aquatic alien species which crashed here eons ago, and he's trying very hard to learn the local whale language so he can fit in. 2 dirt poor art students survived by sharing a little apartment. They struggled through 4 years, barely making ends meet, comforting one another through tragedies and triumph, but never openly admit how they feel about each other until they graduate. And one of them gets a job in another city. Is it too late to confess their love? Or none of the above. Write about whatever you'd like. It can be a prompt of your choosing, doesn't have to be a prompt at all. So yeah, we'll go away for 5 to 10 minutes and just write 1 to 2 lines of an introduction. So yeah. Is anyone ready to share their introduction? I know it can be quite daunting to share your work in front of people who you haven't met before. This is our first session as well, so I understand that it can be quite daunting, but I am excited to hear what you have to say. Yes, Gautam, please share.
Yes, okay. So I went with the first prompt of the young girl, and then this is in first person, so it's The sand under my feet, cool and damp and prickling with the rocks and shells. I froze in shock. I froze in shock, seeing that I was standing right on a pair of large footprints. That's it. And then, sorry, and then like I don't know how to verbally say, but there was like just in quotes, it's like the girl says, "There's still life here." So like with the way that I did it at the end of the sentence, I was like, I think this is like personally interesting because then it could be like we don't know if it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing that there's still people because like maybe it implied that she was heading away or like just something bad happened and she would either be relieved or scared. So it's like I feel like I don't know if this was a story, it would be that thing where like later on reading it actually further shows the emotion that she had upon her reaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like that line about wondering if there's still life here. I think it's a very good introduction. Yeah, it's I'm grabbed. I want to read the book. Yeah, when's it coming out? Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Is there anyone who has anything else to say about it?
Can I share mine on the chat box? Is that fine?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
If you want one of us to read it out, you can say so.
Yes,
but
I'll
if you
type
just
it and
want-
then you can read it out, please.
Sure.
Cool.
So yeah, if you do want to just post your story in the chat, please do. And if you prefer, if I didn't read it, just add that next to it. Okay. I could tell from the dark clouds that the heavens were brewing up a storm within the walls of soul. Isn't it funny how poetry seems to flow like blood, but suddenly runs dry when the reality sets in? Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. It's very beautifully written. It's very evocative. The line of poetry flowing like blood, but then running dry is of my soul. Okay. Yeah, I like it. I want to know this narrator. I want to have a conversation with them. Yeah, I like it a lot. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so it was like it leaves room for more expression about what exactly is happening, but you can instantly tell that there's something going on and it's not nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to read mine.
Yeah, please do.
I like to run a very tight ship nowadays. Anyone who enters my bar knows the rules. Even the blasted lords and ladies of hell abide by them. First off, no magic, period.
Ooh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that very sudden ending to the introduction. I think, yeah, why isn't there magic? Please let me know. So I'm gonna pull up mine. But yeah, is there anyone who would like to go? Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I want to go.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I chose the first one. Okay. Hold on, he shouts from the sidelines. What is the sorcery, I say, agony scarred on my face. Deep breaths, I remind myself. I look back into the distance, wondering where did it all go wrong?
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. Yeah, I mean, all of them so far have been great. I like how this one like really grabbed me. I like the use of dialogue as an introduction. I think it's used very well here. And the next presentation's on dialogue. So yeah. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
I think there are a couple in the chat if you want to read out.
Okay, cool. For number 4. It's been months since you took me to the vet. Should I be worried? I like that. That's a nice one. I like the use of humor in introduction. I think it's very good. Yeah, I really like that one. Is that through the voice of the pet? And Leisha, I have decided to be shameless. Truthfully, there's nothing to be ashamed of, but if I do not actively choose to not give into feeling, I won't do it. That's cool. I like that a lot as well. Yeah, I enjoyed. I'm enjoying the very evocative, emotional introductions. Those work very well as well. Yeah, and I like this one a lot. Emotion in introduction can be very powerful. So yeah, thank you for sharing. This story is not about my youth. If it were, it would tell you about my time in an orphanage on the corner of a quiet street, about how I wasn't an orphan, but that my parents one day decided I was too much of a responsibility. It would tell you, sorry, it would tell you that my best friend John, who I met when I was 14, died suddenly in the middle of the night. It would tell you that when I got adopted, I moved into a house full of beige. Sorry, I haven't actually finished it. I ran out of time, but it was in my head. I will start the sentence again. It would tell you that my best friend John died when I was 14. That when I was adopted and when I looked into my adopter's house, the only break from the beige was the gun blue cushions on the couch. But this story is not about my youth. Sorry, I messed that one up quite a bit. And it's something I'm working on, but yeah.
I really like that. It's very John Green-like.
Thank you.
This session might end, so I think again, if you could just rejoin the link for the next one. I just wanted to add that quickly.
For sure. Yeah, we've got less than that. So yeah, thank you all for joining me for the introduction. I hope you've had a good introduction to the course.
Thank you so much for presenting. That was brilliant.
So we're going to be talking about dialogue today, and I feel like this is such an important topic for a bunch of reasons. And if I look at my own writing, I feel like dialogue is where I have the most fun. As much as world building is just as important, I feel as though dialogue just comes naturally. I believe it's because we do it every day. So yeah, I hope to talk about exposition and characterization. When it comes to exposition, it is a bit tricky, if I'm being entirely honest. It is something that is quite difficult to fully grasp. And I'm not just talking about the authors that we might come across or screenplay writers and so on. But even in our own writing, it's not exactly easy to figure out just how much you should tell the audience about very important plot points and how much you should hold back. So yeah, so those are the main things we're going to be talking about. Again, exposition and characterization. Um, Moving on, I think I'd like for us to touch on maybe the more technical side of dialogue. Not technical in the sense of, how do you put, your quotation marks and everything. I think I'd rather talk about a few assumptions that we might have when it comes to dialogue. So the first question I'd like for us to think about is just how realistic does dialogue have to be? And I'm going to pose a question to the audience in just a few moments. But when it comes to dialogue, especially in our everyday conversations, you might find that, we use certain terms such as like or in between what we actually want to say. And so my question to you then is, do you feel as though it is necessary to include such terms or, to include pauses? Because that's also something that we do when we are having conversations. So yeah, if you are comfortable, you can just raise your hand and then, you can speak, or you can type it in the chat box and hope I'll be able to see it. Please go ahead.
I would say that like, sorry, I would say that like, that kind of dialogue pieces, conversational pieces being involved in dialogue in a story of something, I feel that it actually does make it more realistic. But then it's also that thing where like sometimes the way dialogue is, it would maybe depend on like the characterization of a character, like in a professional setting being described between two workers or something. I feel like it would make sense and seem natural if it's like the way they talk is like fluent and clear with no interruptions. But let's say like between two friends, maybe one of them is nervous, they might have like, stumbles and stuff just to make it like seem realistic, something like that.
Right. That's actually really brilliant, and thank you for raising those points. Again, in certain environments, you might find that people are more concise with their speech. They don't really waste time. Whilst certain people might be a little shy and things like that and nervous, and so their speech will be different, right? And that seems like something that's pretty obvious in real life, right? When it comes to actually, writing this down, we actually need to ask ourselves just how dynamic do our conversations have to be when we're putting them down on paper. So yeah, I do agree that it could help in adding like that extra layer of, I guess, I don't know if realism is the correct term here, but yeah, just making it more realistic. So yeah, thank you for that. And then the second question I was going to ask is, does the medium of your story place restraints on dialogue? Now, by medium, I simply mean, are we using film or are we actually writing this out? Is it a poem? Is it a short story? Is it a narrative piece? I believe that, if you're writing for a movie, right? So dialogue that would be, acted out by actors. I feel as though, you might have differences. And so I'd like to know if you feel like there'd be a lot of differences, if you feel like maybe it's, you have more freedom if you're writing versus, if you're writing a screenplay for a film and so on. So yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that before I continue. Please go ahead.
I would say that like, okay, like maybe when it comes to film, it's that thing where I wouldn't say film would like limits the usage of dialogue, but maybe it even gives an alternative, like, because mainly in film, it's that thing where like dialogue is just people communicating. So I feel like it's that thing where like even there's no need for words sometimes. It's just that thing where actions can also kind of communicate. So like kind of in a way I'm saying that like maybe sometimes actions and like the body, if like maybe a character is like doing some physical expression kind of thing can kind of replace the dialogue in a way.
Right. I definitely do agree. I mean, again, films are more of a visual representation of your story, right? Whereas if you're writing it down, you're sort of putting that expectation onto the reader. Like you hope that their imagination will be able to carry the story forward. And so a lot of things you might be able to get away with in film might not exactly work in a story, right? In a written piece. Take the example of two people having a conversation in a busy restaurant, right? You might find that, you know, it'll be hard for the sort of the two people to hear each other, right? They might need to speak more loudly. They might need to repeat themselves and so on and so forth. And again, if you were to write that down, you might find that you'll spend a lot more time perhaps describing the location, the setting, and everything. Um, and then you might not necessarily focus on, you know, things like tone or like, I suppose, aspects of voice, right? Like, are they projecting their voices? You actually need to put that into the dialogue. You need to let them know. Whilst with film, you don't really need to do that. They can see that, they can hear that. So I do believe that, again, you know, like there are certain restrictions that you might find. And just going back to your point, you know, film really allows action to speak for you, right? So yeah, that's really great. And yeah, so those are just some of the sort of issues that you might come across. Actually, okay, sorry, I'm seeing two hands up. I wanted to see if I could lower the hand, but please do go ahead.
I'm not too sure if this relates wholly to the point at hand, but I think in terms of realistic dialogue, I think it's really interesting how both in films and in novels, the way dialogue is represented or written is different. For example, in your most typical sense, dialogue is, um, with the quotation marks and then a line and then close quotations and all of that. But I think in more contemporary spaces, it's interesting to see how even in a movie, a text message or a conversation within a text, either like an instant messaging thing, it pops up either in a film or even in a novel. So I think in terms of, I'm not too sure about that being restraining or, but I do think in terms of it being a realistic thing, it's interesting just to see how dialogue is represented in these various mediums.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually love that, you know, like you brought up that sort of contrast, right? Like again, I suppose it doesn't necessarily have to be like a restriction. In a way, it could be also freeing. So I actually really love that. Thank you. So moving on to the next point. So exposition. This is one of my favorites. So in this little slide over here, I say it helps to think of dialogue as more than just a conversation between two or more characters. That's because I believe that, again, your story is supposed to communicate with, you know, the audience in a sort of way where it's like you don't necessarily have to, you know, think of it as, oh, okay, you know, here I am watching this movie or I'm reading this book, and you know, it actually has to address me. It doesn't necessarily have to break the fourth wall, but it should be able to engage you in such a way that, you know, you end up asking questions. So yes, you might not physically be having a conversation with this book or movie. It would be pretty cool if you could, but at least it's engaging your mind. And so it kind of goes back to that point that Dylan made, whereby the best introductions have you asking questions, right? And so when you do have, you know, your dialogue, you still need to make sure that you give leaving enough room for the reader, the audience, to be able to actually come up with their own questions. You know, you don't really need to answer everything right off the bat, right? And I suppose that's what exposition tries to do. It tries to bridge that gap between what the director, what the author is trying to present, versus what you might actually see on screen. And if you're dealing with very abstract concepts, it becomes even more important for you to handle your exposition carefully, right? You don't really just dump an entire paragraph and then hope they understand. And by paragraph, I mean you can't really have pieces of dialogue whereby one person is speaking and they have enough text to last about 5 minutes. Like in real life, a conversation is more dynamic and it takes different directions. It's sort of like the course of a river. And so it is important to be able to figure that out. So yeah, I believe, again, if you're not really striking that balance, it can end up taking away from your story, because then the reader ends up, asking themselves, well, like, do I actually understand what's going on here, right? And not out of curiosity, but out of being left behind by the author, right? And I feel like those are the wrong questions, or I suppose the worst questions that a reader could ask, right? Not because it's their fault per se, but because the author hasn't really communicated efficiently or effectively, rather. So yeah, I believe that some of the best teachers growing up were the ones that were able to really break stuff down for me, right? And I'd imagine that this is the same for a lot of us here as well. The ones that actually managed to sort of turn down this sort of insurmountable idea into something that I could actually approach. That's what really stuck with me. I look at a lot of things that I had to deal with in biology, for example, and there were these really cool techniques that the teacher would use. For example, when you're learning about, I believe it's like the science of life and stuff like that. So movement, respiration, reproduction, and so on and so forth. And like, there were these really cool techniques that they would use to, really make it more accessible, And it wasn't about diluting it or dumbing it down, but really just saying that, okay, look, this is the information I have, but again, I'm trying to create a bridge of understanding. Before I continue, I'd really love to know if there are any questions so far. All right, I believe we can continue that. So I know a lot of us have watched Inception, and this is just a disclaimer. Again, these are just my opinions. It's not a holistic critique of Inception, right? So I do believe that Inception was an incredible movie, right? It managed to make us ask questions about things that we sort of took for granted, right? The idea of dreaming and, I suppose questioning your reality, right? Those are kind of questions that you might not really think about until you're actually prompted by, a piece of media, right? And so I hope everyone can read this. I'm actually not sure if this gets in the way of stuff. I'm just going to move it like this. But yeah. So I say, I'd imagine a vast majority of us would be astonished if we met someone who hasn't referenced some of the lines from Inception, or at least discussed some of the concepts it tackles since its release nearly 11 years ago. It is regarded as one of the most notable works in Christopher Nolan's filmography, and for good reason too. However, it's one of the few movies I find quite difficult to rewatch. So I believe it was a few months ago, I decided, I'm just gonna go over a bunch of Nolan films, and I managed to watch Prestige, Memento, and then I went over Inception. And it was quite interesting that a movie that I'd really enjoyed when I was younger was a movie that I found myself almost struggling to keep up with, right? And not because it was inherently bad, but because I suppose I had I had a new way of looking at the film, right? I noticed that one of the characters, for instance, was used as a sort of tool to create exposition, right? Or to I guess let the story unfold. And again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was a bit jarring in my opinion. And I will try to show you a few movie clips, and I want you to pay attention to Ariadne, which is um, the character that sort of works as this foundation for exposition, right? And I want you to look at how much time she spends speaking, um, and then how much time she spends, just listening, right? So I'm just gonna skip over here. It's really good enough to make you want to sit through the whole movie again. But yeah, so the point isn't to scrutinize what we just watched, but rather to point out, I suppose, the importance of exposition. Now, again, we're dealing with a very abstract concept, and you really need to make sure that the audience is able to keep up, right? And so you might have, I suppose, pieces of dialogue that are quite long, right? Where one character might be speaking. Again, there's sort of that dynamic whereby one character might know more about the topic and the subject. And so, it only follows that, they might end up speaking more than, the other character, right? But at the same time, a lot of the questions, that Ariadne was asking, right? They were related, to, I suppose, what was happening in the bigger picture, right? And so as much as it's a learning experience for her, she's sort of helping us catch up as, the audience. Now, if you watch this movie multiple times, you might end up, thinking to yourself, well, gee, this is taking a little long, like it's taking a while. But again, everyone consumes things in a different way. And so one person might be able to grasp a concept immediately, whilst another person might take their time. And this doesn't, describe qualities of superiority to one person and inferiority to another person. It really doesn't. Again, we're all diverse people. And I suppose this is another idea that we see popping up in a movie like Interstellar, whereby, again, you need to use exposition to help the audience catch up. And so there's a scene towards the end of the movie, and again, apologies for spoilers. I believe the rule is if it's over 5 years old, then it's on you. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so in Interstellar, towards the end of the movie, one of the characters, Cooper, ends up in the Tesseract, and essentially he's able to, I guess, manipulate space and time, and that's a result of his love for his daughter, right? Now, again, the character ends up pointing this out and says, well, it's love, right? And quite a few people had problems with that because they thought, oh, it's too on the nose. But in reality, not everyone might have been able to understand what exactly was going on. And so again, exposition really helps us to really figure out where exactly we are in the story. The next point I would like to touch upon is characterization. But before I continue, I'd just love to know, does everyone at least have an idea of what exposition is and what it hopes to do? You can just raise your hand or, chat. It doesn't matter.
Actually, I'd just like to raise a small point, specifically about the example you used in Inception, is that sometimes characters like that, they are supposed to be a stand-in for the audience, specifically so that the audience can get that exposition. So especially when you're writing, that's why in like fantasy genre or sci-fi genre especially, there's always going to be that fish out of water character. It's why books like Harry Potter, Chronicles of Narnia, Hitchhiker's Guide, all those books are so popular, because that the main characters are often stand-ins for the audience. So we learn along the way they do. But if you write something where you can't afford to do that, you can't afford to have a fish out of water character, either as the main character or in the story at large, then do you have any advice regarding that in terms of how should you get exposition through about a world where it's, not so wall of text explaining this little detail and how it works in your system? Do you have any examples to share? Or like,
okay, so I'm just going to repeat your question. So you're essentially asking if I sort of have any solutions to avoiding walls of text and making sure that you know I guess the audience still understands what's going on by making use of fish out of water characters, as you mentioned. I think that was a really good point. Is that what you're asking?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
that's exactly what I'm asking.
I may not have very good examples off the top of my head, um, but I would say that one thing you can try and do is to have more opportunities for dialogue to take place, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that you should, have 5 pages of straight dialogue, right? Like you still obviously need to propel the story forward, by talking about events and perhaps even the background and the history of the world that you're in, right? But if you can create more opportunities for these characters to interact, right? So maybe they meet at a bar, or perhaps it's a therapy session. For example, there's a movie called Gross Point Blank. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. Apologies. But one of the main problems that the main character faces, he's like I guess an assassin for hire, and his profession is taking a toll, on his mental health and things like that. Again, it's a comedy, so I guess you can kind of breathe. But yeah, so what happens is, instead of the character sort of telling us exactly you what's going on in his life, or sort of having these interactions whereby he's just spilling it. I guess they sort of do it in a clever way whereby um you know he speaks to a therapist, his psychologist, right? And in that kind of setup, the client is able to speak more, right? They're kind of given these large periods of time whereby they're just sort of speaking about the issues that they may be facing. And so that's sort of a clever way, right? Like I suppose it's one of those like extra interactions that you can bring about. And so I guess that works maybe better in film or stuff like that. But in terms of writing, I do believe that if you can create more instances whereby your characters are speaking to one another, then you can, I guess, sort of bridge that gap and make sure that, I guess, that fish out of water character doesn't, I wouldn't say become, yeah, I guess become too frustrating. So I really do hope that that answers your question. Again, apologies if I didn't answer it sufficiently.
No, that's fine.
All right, so the next point is characterization. Now, I'm just going to quickly read this out. When we think of characterization through dialogue, we're simply referring to how the interactions between two or more characters reveal who they are. All right, this can be on the nose and revealed right away, or it can be a gradual process drawn out over multiple conversations. To illustrate the latter point, let us take the example of Ash from Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, this was one of my favorite movies growing up, and it's actually quite hard for me to pick a favorite character. But one thing I really enjoyed was, I suppose, I guess the subtle bits of character development, right? So when we think of characterization, we're just sort of trying to flesh out these characters so that they're more than just names to the audience. We need to sort of let the audience know that, okay, this character that I've written down for you has a history, has feelings, right? And how do I unearth those like those feelings, this person's true innate character? And you do that again through dialogue. Now, a lot of the time, you can sort of approach it and just say like, okay, look, hey, my name is Markan Andreas Nkhwazi. Um, I'm a young adult and I love writing, right? That's one way you could do it. Another way you could do it is you could have somebody else speak to this character, right? And then, sort of reveal these extra bits of information, right? And so they might say, "Oh, gee, Mark, and all you ever do is just work on that book, right?" And so, without having to sort of tell you directly that, this person loves writing, you can, sort of, pick up the pieces and say, okay, actually, this character could enjoy, like sitting down and writing a book, for instance. Now, to bring the example back to this guy over here, this is Ash from Fantastic Mr. Fox, and he's a character that suffers from what I would call insecurities, right? He has a lot to live up to. His father was an incredible athlete, and he was well known around the town and everything, and everyone loves him, right? And then he has a cousin who comes over because his father is ill, right? And he needs a place to stay, and then he lives with his uncle and his aunt, and then his cousin Ash, right? So Christopherson is essentially the perfect son stereotype. He is great at physical activities. He's smart, well spoken, and all of that stuff, right? Now, throughout this movie, Ash always mentions that he's an athlete, right? And at first you think to yourself like, well, gee, okay, can you show us maybe, or why are you mentioning this? Is it because you're jealous of Christopherson, right? And we see this playing out about two times, I think two or three times, but I did put down the timestamps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll on over to the movie, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. That's the first instance, right? You can see that, again, he's misunderstood, and the last bit of I guess Ash's concerns are ignored completely, right? Like and I guess it kind of ties into the fact that he said sometimes I feel like you guys don't even notice, which could be more than just the fact that he thinks he's an athlete. And then the second instance is I believe 41 minutes. So I'm just gonna scroll on over. So again, we sort of see this little bit of dialogue, right? And I suppose this time, we might think that it's sort of him just, I guess, still trying to rebel, right? And you can see that, his parents obviously have an understanding. Ooh, running a bit late. Yeah, I got 5 minutes left. Sorry, I'm going to try and wrap this up real quick. Yeah, so again, you see this bit of dialogue, and I suppose it's easy for us to, just relegate it to him just being, a kid, right? And then by the end of the movie, we do get to see Ash's sort of athletic skills on full display. I'll try not to waste too much time actually showing that. I just want to show you the final bit when, I guess you could say, Ash receives his apotheosis as again, it's like this dialogue, this little piece of dialogue, this little piece of I'm an athlete, it evolves over time, and it ends up being inextricably linked to his character development. By the end of the movie, we can see that, Ash is no longer an insecure, depressed and cynical fox child, but now he's able to, relate to others better. He's able to show the world that, he really was an athlete from the beginning, right? Right. I guess you could also argue that he grows into that that belief. So yeah, that's all I'd have to say for examples of characterization, how you can sort of use dialogue um, to really launch your characters, right, in the direction of, I guess, character growth and, moving the plot forward. What do I mean by this? Well, when we look at Ash's, character development, right, all of this ends up, allowing them to escape from this, I guess, facility, right? And, this ends up saving them. They're able to go back, and they help the town and everything, right? And so we can see that there are actual consequences, to that character development, and that character development again is tied to this repeating idea of him being an athlete, which is revealed to us through dialogue. So yeah, if there are any questions or anything you'd love to add, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen real quick. Also, feel free to mention anything in the chat box. Yeah, like that'd be really good as well. But if not, you can always just raise your hand and then you can go from there. All right, so I do believe I did go over time. I was hoping to leave some time for us to go over some dialogue prompts that were prepared for last year. So all credit goes to Kiva for putting it together. Yeah, okay, thank you, Dylan. I can see, thank you very much. I really do appreciate that deeply, deeply. Yeah, if there's nothing else, I don't know if we can spare some time to go over the writing prompts, but yeah, thank you again for joining us, and I do hope that this provided some insights into dialogue and some of the goals that it hopes to achieve in the story. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That was a really, really interesting presentation. I do know we are over time, so we still have a Q&A session to do. And if you'd like, we could possibly also do the dialogue prompts. So I know this session is about to end. So once again, if you'd like to rejoin, we'll be able to do some of the dialogue prompts because we are here after all to write. We can do some of the dialogues and share some of her work. And then if you'd like, we do have a Q&A session where you can ask questions about who we are as a society. We'll also just explain a little bit about how we're going to work. Obviously, this is a workshop, so it's a bit different from our usual sessions. So yeah, I'm going to let this meeting end and then do rejoin if you'd like to do some dialogue prompts. And again, for the Q&A session. But if you don't rejoin, we will not hold it to you. We understand we are over time. So again, thank you for joining us. Thanks, Mark, for the presentation. And yeah, hope to see you soon in the next meeting in a couple of seconds.
So that's essentially what we do, the workshops. Today was kind of an example of a workshop because it was a longer session on multiple aspects of writing. Our weekly sessions would be shorter though. So how will it function this year in terms of these sessions? So our weekly sessions will be held live online every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And this will only be during term time, so not during exam time, as we understand everyone is in the study zone. A link will be sent out before each session, so be sure to check your emails as well as follow our social medias for updates regarding that. Our workshops and writing competitions will continue as normal, with workshops also being held online. We will try our best to host face-to-face sessions once more of our committee members are able to return to campus, as well as when the pandemic seems to be ceasing. Because right now, there's rumors of a third wave and we don't want to put anyone in a dangerous position. So I'll hand over to Daniel to talk about our subscription fee.
Okay, so our normal subscription fee is 200 Rand. However, per regulation set up by the SRC, we are cutting that down by 50%. So you'll be charging your student account 100 Rand for the whole year. And what that will go into is for us to host prizes and other competitions. And normally what we use that money for is for like an writing outing. Like last year we went to Kenton. But, obviously, as Julia said, with threats of a third wave, we are not going to risk you guys getting sick just for that. So we'll probably have writing competitions and have those prizes and use that money towards that, or even use money towards hosting longer Zoom sessions for workshops and such. We're just going to see how well that goes. And in terms of signing up, it's on the SRC page, right? Are you connected? It will direct you to a Google form where you can enter your details and you'll be signed up. If you don't feel like hunting down the link, it can be found on our social medias, like in our Facebook or Instagram accounts and stuff like that, or in the chat box in this meeting. If you want to deregister, like if you registered to us by mistake, then simply send us an email and we'll take care of that. We're not going to hold any grudges to you about it. It's completely fine if you deregister. We obviously can't really encourage you to deregister because we want you guys to join us. But we're just saying that there's no hard feelings or anything like that if you decide for the final date that you don't want to be part of the society. The deadline for this date, by the way, is the 9th of June. So if you send us an email before that, we can deregister you and then we can see about getting your money back. But if you do it afterwards, then sorry, but we actually have no authority or power to reverse that transaction after that date. And with that, we will open the floor to questions.
She was trying to say, provide feedback on what you want to hear in sessions, as well as how you think sessions have gone and perhaps ways we could change or evolve them. And we can definitely take those into account, as well as the running of social media. So we're a very constructive society. We build as it goes. Khoitsimang, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I don't think I'm properly remembering, but wasn't there something about like there would be a WhatsApp group about for the InkSoc?
Yes.
So would that start like after June?
This will be starting from, I think Kiva said the 8th of June is our first session. So we would compile that WhatsApp group just before then. So once everyone has registered, when the closing registration date has ended, which I think is the 3rd of June, then we will compile the WhatsApp group. The WhatsApp group is optional, like you don't have to be part of it because we understand there's a lot of people on the WhatsApp group. So we'll only, if you added your number, will you be added to the WhatsApp group on the Google forum. But so we will communicate via WhatsApp group, email, and on our social medias regarding all of our things. So you shouldn't be in the dark about anything. Thank you for that question. In the chat, Tana, thank you for bringing up our anthology. I hope you liked it. And for those of you who don't know, we released an anthology, Writer's Bloc, that Kiva and I worked on last year as a production for Ink Society. You can access it on Issue, the website, and there's a link on our social medias to it. So please go check that out. And to answer your question, yes, we are. We are in the process of coming up with the theme, as well as setting dates for submissions. So for those of you who don't know, the anthology is basically a compilation of work from the members of Ink Society into a little publication that we're trying to get printed into hard copy, but for now is an online publication. It has reached a lot of people, and we hope that this serves as a way to get you on the track to getting published, as well as to give you more exposure with your writing. So for the anthology, you will be able to submit pieces. We will review them, tweak them if need be, and we'll be in constant conversation. And when we see it fit and suitable, we will add it to the anthology. So that will be one of the first writing competitions kind of for this year, coming up in June. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. I hope I answered your question. Okay, great. Are there any other questions regarding how the society functions, or how to go about things, if there needs clarity on anything? You are welcome to email us or send us a message via our social medias if something does come up. Cool. So while we wait for Kiva to type, I think we can maybe bring the Q&A to a close, and then those of you who would like to stay for the writing prompts of the dialogue session, yes, the dialogue session, may stay, and then Mark can just put that back up on the screen. And that will just be a very informal, not recorded part of the session.
Okay. I'm sorry I had to leave you guys now, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this workshop, and I look forward to seeing you guys more in June when we officially start. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Danielle.
Wait, so is it that like this will be, what do you call it? Like we won't have any more after that until June?
After this?
Yeah, after this one until June.
Well, I think we're just waiting for people to sign up at the moment. So I think we don't want to hold more sessions, because this was kind of like an informal trial run session. We don't want to hold more sessions that then exclude future people.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense. So only. Sorry?
Oh, no, sorry. But yeah, I heard you. It was just something on the phone.
Yes. So our first session would be the 8th of June. So I think it's in 2 weeks. So it is kind of a while, but what we can do in the meantime is post more writing prompts and things to get you thinking before we hold those professional sessions that are inclusive of everyone who joined the society. I hope that makes sense. Cool. Thank you everyone for showing up. You're welcome to leave if you have to, and I hope you had a wonderful time and learned a lot. And thank you for your participation and your wonderful writing. For those who stay, Mark can put up his presentation if he wants to.
All right. Can I just get confirmation that you guys can see this? I'm actually not sure if I can see thumbs up, but if somebody could just yell it out. I'm just going to go ahead for now. All right, so this is the writing prompt. There are quite a few prompts actually, so I feel like there's a lot of variety, and you can go ahead. I think, would it be fine if we did 5 to 10 minutes, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. At
Right.
12:30, we'll reconvene with our writing.
All right, awesome. All right, so I'm just gonna scroll back to the normal screen if that's fine. Okay. All right, so I chose the, where is it? Yeah, the sixth one, sorry. Okay, so let me begin. I wrote this down on my phone, so I'm sorry that you can't see it. All right. Okay. If you thought we were the only ones in conflict, then you're mistaken. I can't tell if you're selling yourself short or if you're humble, and I think I'm seeing double. My oh my, stop it, you two. Carla throws the pillow she was sitting on at Gwen and it hits the shutters. And then Carla proceeds to say, "You've got to be kidding me. Please tell me that's not my favorite." Ashwin replies, "You're in luck. You asked Gwen to move that to the kitchen like a week ago." Carla, "Thank God." She begins to go to clean the mess. Ashwin, "It may not be a favorite, but it certainly isn't your cheapest one either." And then Carla slumps back into her chair. Gwendolyn then says, I'll get the broom." Carla puts her hands in her head and begins speaking beneath. Carla puts her hand in her hands, her head in her hands, and begins speaking beneath her breath. "Listen, Carla, we can go fetch you a new one, quality plants, for a great price too." "Oh yeah? A good friend of mine offered to sell some not too long ago. I kindly declined the offer, seeing as there was no room anywhere in the apartment." And then Ashwin proceeds to say, "Come on, Feldman, it's a plant, not another dog. Just move a few boxes around and you're sorted. You're just being lazy." I, for one, wholeheartedly agree. "Really? Isn't it a little overboard to call me lazy? I mean, I haven't even done anything yet." Gwendolyn then replied, "That's exactly the problem." Carla continued, "Okay, we're being sidetracked here. Can't we save this for later? So does your friend still have those quality plants on sale?" "I'd like to think so, but let me leave him a text and see what he says. If he does, then we could stop by his store." "How soon?" "I bet we could even drop by today if he replies on time." At a time like this, most people are knocking off from work. Like I said, he's a good friend. No complaints here. I need to leave the house anyway. "Did you get any word on that plant?" "Yeah, nothing short of 600 Rand. I thought you mentioned that it wouldn't be expensive." "I guess I was mistaken. I know it's a little expensive, but I could spare some money." And that's pretty much it. Um, Sorry for like the strange nature of it. I kind of put names, but then, yeah, hopefully it was understandable. Anyone else? Yeah, feel free to type it out if you did. I think it's a lot better to do it that way because then you might run into the same problems I did, where like nobody can really see the different characters. Uh, so yeah, but again, it's also not a problem if you happened to write it out elsewhere. You can just read it out. Okay, cool. I see one in the message box. Okay. Thoughts were racing in his mind. To him, it felt like there were two birds circling the sky. One was colorful, bright and filled with happiness. The other was dark, cold and filled with sadness. He hoisted the gun playfully and said, in my next life, I want to come back as a butterfly." Ooh, that is really chilling. I must say that was really good. Um, Please correct me if I'm wrong, but um, it almost implies that he proceeds to take his life. I could be mistaken, but that's what I got from it. And I love that even in his final moments, he sort of presented with I guess with nature in its splendor on full display. Um, so yeah, sort of like a contrast between, I guess, the dark nature of suicide, and then, you know, I suppose the beautiful nature of nature. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
suppose.
It was, well, in my head, he doesn't die.
Oh, geez,
So
I'm
that's
so
a spoiler.
sorry.
Yeah, he doesn't die. Although he has that whole suicidal nature, he doesn't die in the end.
Okay.
I wanted to make it longer, but then I thought it would take too much time, so I just paused at the.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm actually glad that it ends on a more hopeful note, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much for sharing that. I thought that was really beautiful. I guess
Thank you.
I interpreted it as poignant. Yeah, so I guess it also shows you that we all have like different interpretations. which is,
Exactly.
yeah, like that's just amazing. Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else who would love to share? All right. With that said, I'd just like to just give a big thank you to to everyone who joined and also for being brave enough to go ahead and ask questions and provide your your responses and everything. Um, I think that was really cool. And again, like it brings me so much joy when we're all able to share like our work and everything. And I think just now that was a really great example of you know how incredible writing can be. You know, and how sometimes you might interpret something and you might veer off the original meaning that was intended by the author. But again, by sharing it, we leave it open to interpretation. And so it's just great that we can actually engage in that dialogue. I hope you saw what I did there. But yeah, thank you again. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully you can walk away having learned something and hopefully feeling encouraged to join us for the next sessions. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation and for sharing. It was really great. And thanks for everyone for attending all the multiple re-meetings and everything. I'm sure that was a bit tedious, but we appreciate the effort that everyone has put in. And thank you for sticking around. I'm sure we can bring this meeting to a close and we can continue with the rest of our weekend. And keep your eyes and ears peeled for updates about what's happening with the society on all of our social medias and emails. And considering that the session went quite well, maybe we will host a few more informal sessions before the actual start date on the 8th of June. So thank you once again, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.